More on this, we're joined now by Minister of State for EU Affairs and Defence, Jennifer Carroll McNeill. And Minister, you're welcome to the programme. Can I ask for your reaction to this assassination attempt?
It's a shocking attack on democracy. As the Taoiseach and Taoiseach have said, it's a vile attack, and I think it's been condemned by leaders all around Europe. I spoke with the Ambassador Droba, this afternoon to offer our reaction to this, our shock, our horror that this would happen in a European democracy, and our thoughts are with the Prime Minister as he attempts to undergo his recovery. It's a very serious situation for democracy.
I know Taoiseach Micheál Martin has said that this shooting is, and I'll quote, shaking people across the European Union. Do you think that the Irish government and indeed EU governments more generally need to take more seriously potential threats to politicians? I
mean, Sarah, this couldn't have happened in a more strange way this afternoon in Leinster House. We today were launching, under the direction of the Ceann Comhairle, the report by the Task Force on Safe Participation in Political Life. I have been the ministerial representative on that piece of work, chaired by Noreen O'Sullivan, for the past year. And this afternoon we were in the Oireachtas launching this report, and while we were launching this report about safe participation in political life, the news came through about the shooting of Prime Minister Fico. So it couldn't be more serious, obviously for European democracy, but in terms of taking it seriously in Ireland, this news came literally as we were announcing recommendations and a pathway to make political life a safer place, to protect our democracy, to encourage more people to come into our democracy and to feel safe in doing so. But I recognise the contradictory messages there are in that. I really do. And it's a difficult moment.
And in that moment, when that news comes through as you're launching that task force about safety in political life, does it make you consider your own safety, particularly over and your colleagues, I'm sure, over the coming weeks, when a lot of you are going to be out in the streets, out in the doors, out in public an awful lot with the various elections coming up?
I don't want to say it, but frankly it would be dishonest of me not to say that it does make you consider your own safety. And I think what's evident from the accompanying report conducted by UCD, which was a survey of politicians here, is that many people have considered withdrawing, even briefly, from political life because of some of the challenges and difficulties in it. And that is an honest assessment, but it's very difficult as a politician to acknowledge that, because you all the time want to serve your community. We are only here to serve our community. Politicians could get other jobs. They're doing this because they want to serve their community. They're not doing it for their own enrichment. They're doing it to serve their community, and they want to continue that, and they want to continue to protect Irish democracy. You have to acknowledge the challenges within it, but it is a very small number of people. Notwithstanding the seriousness of today's events, it is a very small number of people in Ireland. People are overwhelmingly decent. They're overwhelmingly committed to political institutions, to political parties. It is the people of Dunleary who will decide whether my mandate is renewed or rejected. And it should only be for them, and not for bullies on social media or different attacks of the kind that we're seeing in Europe and that we have seen in other parts of Europe. So
and
it is important.
It's obviously having an effect. If you look at some of the quotes that were given anonymously to one of those reports today, one politician saying that while they don't get upset easily, I would often be crying at work, said that politician. Another saying they were suffering really bad anxiety. Another spoke about not being able to use public transport, of being approached in public to be told that they would be killed. Do you recognise that picture that's being painted there?
Of course I do. I recognised everything in the report. I recognised all of the difficulties that come with it. And yet what I'm saying to you is it's so hard for me to acknowledge that publicly, because I am so committed to doing my job, as is everybody else here. I am so committed to Irish democracy, as is everybody else here. That is the only reason to do this job, to want to serve the community and to want to serve the state. And so I recognise all of the examples that are given. I recognise them personally, of course I do, but nevertheless everybody here comes to here and they do their job on behalf of the community. They do it every single day, and I can't overstate how important it is that that's the dominant narrative, that's the dominant discussion that we have about service to the community, and the fact that these are small events that do happen, there's no denying it, but that it doesn't take from our commitment to democracy, and that we want more people to come in, and that we want to stand up to this, and that this be looked back on as a historical blip in Irish democracy, rather than taking over and forcing me or anybody else out of politics and out of serving the community.
Yeah, as you say, you have personal experience with this. I know over a period of time in 2020, you yourself were subjected to harassment by a man who sent you sexually explicit videos and messages, and he was given a suspended sentence in October 2022. And you said in your victim impact statement to the court in May of that year, you described how this happened in the middle, as it happens, of a general election campaign, it was that time, and that it left you with a cold sense of dread while you were canvassing. What impact has it had, or has it continued to have an impact on you, that experience, on your work as a politician?
Well, Sarah, I don't very often talk about it because I don't want to be associated just with that. I want to be associated with serving my community, but today is an important day because it is the launch of the task force report, and of course we have this very serious incident. I and my staff, more importantly than me, have experienced ongoing issues of different kinds, whether on social media, whether in written correspondence, a lot of different issues, and we just don't talk about them. We just get on with the job. And if you look at the conduct of that election, yes, all of that was happening. Nobody knew about it. I turned up every day to make my case to be elected by the people of Dunleary. Nobody knew about it. I didn't complain about it. I didn't do anything. I just kept turning up. And in the same way, every single politician in Leinster House is turning up. Oh, it's not just me that has experienced this. Micheál Carrigy, Kieran Cannon, Anne Rabbitt, people right across the political spectrum, Martin Kenny, and they're all here today doing their jobs on behalf of their communities. It's not just me, it's everybody. And they're turning up and they're doing it because this is bigger than me or any of the other individuals. This is about the preservation of Irish democracy and European democracy that is under active threat by people who would like to disrupt it, who would like to see a Russian way of life dominating Europe instead of a freedom of expression, freedom of political participation, freedom of protest, these values of democracy that we hold so close and dear to us, that we have protected for so many years. So I'm not going to be put off by anybody, and I suspect my colleagues, notwithstanding the very dark and difficult moments that I know so many of them have had, they're still here and they're still out canvassing for the local and European elections on June the 7th. Never more important to turn up and vote. Please turn up and vote.
And yet your colleague Pascal Donoghue, speaking about this, said, I think last week, a small number of people, he said, are angrier than they used to be. They feel they have a licence to say and do things that has not been the case before. Now, we will get text to this programme on the back of this conversation from people listening to you saying, we're angrier because we feel let down by politicians, and we've a right to be angry and we've a right to express that. What would you say to them?
Everybody has the right to express themselves, but what Pascal and I are reflecting is that the nature, tone and volume of it has changed over the period that he and I have been involved in politics in different ways. The place for really exercising your grievances obviously in the ballot box, but I receive communication from constituents with a problem here, there, or a problem generally, and I answer it and I stand up. I come on shows like this, I'm held accountable. There is a different nature and tone to it, and a lot of it is amplified by very wrong, simply inaccurate information on social media about different issues or about politicians generally, and that feeds into a tone of not being able to believe politicians. You and I, listen, you can grill me as hard as you like on any question of policy, but you don't ever question my good faith in terms of turning up and doing the job and trying to do the best that I can do. And that is a totally, that's an appropriate way of going about it. Ask me every question under the sun, but you know what I mean? But there's a different tone to what's going underneath, which is, I question the system, I question the good faith, and I question your motivation, and I don't believe what you're saying. And that is a different thing, and that is largely coming from the expansion of social media, the different trends that caught on during and after COVID, and frankly, and we've seen this right across Europe, and we have so much evidence about this, from active disinformation by nefarious actors and nefarious states who are trying to undermine Western democracy, not just in Ireland, but right across Europe, and trying to impact elections in this way.
What can or should be done then, in your view, to try? I know you're saying you want more people to run, you want more people to get involved. There will be an awful lot of people looking at these reports and listening to you speaking and others speaking, thinking, well, why would I?
Well, look, I'll tell you what people can do. There's a series of recommendations today which relate to the houses of the Oireachtas, An Garda Síochána, political parties, and all of those have to be implemented properly. But what Noreen Sullivan said today is, this is as much about the Irish people. I am a temporary representative of some of the Irish people. This is about the Irish people and what they decide they want for the future, and that you can't be a bystander in this anymore. As I said, overwhelmingly people in Ireland are incredibly decent. They need, as Noreen Sullivan said, not me, they need to be upstanders and calling out the difficulties that they're seeing and standing up for their democracy. This is their democracy, not mine, and it is a broader question about civil society, about media. You're experiencing it too, the social media abuse. So are people in NGOs, so are people in civic society, so are people in newspapers, irrespective of the background that you come from. Politicians across all of the political parties. These are efforts to disrupt everybody in civic and public life, and they're not representative of the people whom I represent. They are not representative of the real life, real world experience, and it is only the Irish people who can stand up to this and say, nah, we're not having it.
I just want to ask you finally, Minister, on a separate question on the ongoing issue around tents and more tents again in Grand Canal. We heard from Taoiseach Micheál Martin earlier today saying that it's not a good idea, he believes, for charities to be providing tents to unaccommodated asylum seekers because there's a lack of sanitation and safety around the pitching of tents. It's not the way it should be done. If possible, he was saying that the short-term solution would be securing a significant state-owned site where proper tents and proper sanitation would be. Now, we also spoke to Louisa Santora, who is CEO of the Mendicity Institution, and she was saying she agrees with that. There shouldn't be tents. She also says there's no need to be tents because there's empty places in hostels all around Dublin City, but because departments are refusing to work together and the Department of Housing says that's not our job to look after homeless migrants, that those empty hostel beds are being left empty.
I can't comment on the facts of that. I don't have that information, but the reality is that this is a whole of government question. A whole of government solution is necessary. We are converting office blocks in Blackrock to house people who need accommodation. This requires a complete government response because we don't want people in tents. We don't want the sanitation situation. The Tánaiste is of course correct, and it is an absolutely whole of government challenge to be able to meet the needs that are here.
Minister General for Karen McNeill, thank you very much for joining us.